Information and technology. It's our second dimension. And when we talk about these dimensions, it's the perspective that we're looking at those products and services through so we can co-create that value for our consumers. And so when we look at it from information technology, these are two different things. We have the information and we have the technology that we're going to hold the information in. Let's start with technologies because that's the one that's probably easier to understand. When we talk about technology, this is all the things that an information technology specialist is going to deal with on a daily basis. That's the servers, the mobile phones, the laptops, the desktops, the routers, the switches, all of that stuff. But when we talk about technology, it's really split up into two different things. There's technologies that are going to support the IT service, and there's technologies that are going to support the IT service management. Notice there's a difference there. Now, when I talk about the IT services, let's say that you're Uber. Okay, you're going to be a ride-sharing service. What technologies do you need to provide your service? Well, you have to have a website, you have to have an app, you need to have servers and infrastructure, you need to have applications and communication systems, maybe some artificial intelligence to send the right driver to the right location. You might be using cloud computing and cognitive computing. You might even be using blockchain if you're accepting Bitcoin for payment. All of that stuff is the stuff that we need to do to get that service in the hands of your consumer. Now, on the other side of things, we have technologies that support service management. And when we're talking about technology supporting IT service management, we're talking about the things that allow the business to do its function. That's things like workflow management. It might be your customer service tools. It might be remote collaboration so you can log into those IT services, those servers and cloud services, to go in and configure them. It might be things like mobile platforms or inventory systems so you can figure out where all your spare parts are. All the things that aren't going to necessarily deliver the service to the end user, but are things the business needs anyway. For example, you might have an intranet SharePoint site that serves as your knowledge base. And if so, that would be a supporting IT service management technology, not an IT services technology. Now, some of these technologies will be the same. You might be using cloud computing in both areas. You might be using artificial intelligence in both areas. But there is that difference there. There's those things that are supporting the end user, those IT services, and then those things that are supporting your internal staff so they can support your end user, and those things are going to be the IT service management technologies. So that's the technology side of things. Now, let's consider the information side of things as we look at our products and services. For some of our services, information management is probably the primary means of enabling that customer value. For example, if you're a newspaper that's online, what are you delivering to your customers? You're delivering information. And so information management is critical to that. You might be a data analytics company and you're providing data analysis and the result of that data analysis as information. And so if that's the case, information is very important to you. So information management has lots of different challenges though, because when we talk about information, there's all these different things we need to make sure are there so the information can get to where it needs to be to add that value. That's things like ensuring that we have availability of the information, reliability of the information, accessibility of the information. The information needs to be timely, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to be relevant. All of these are factors that we judge information by. And if we can get all those 6 factors, we probably have some highly valuable information. But to maintain all of those is a challenge and it's difficult. And so to be able to do that, we have to make sure that we're providing good security for it and good IT services that underlie those informations. We need to make sure we're meeting all the regulatory compliance requirements and the legal requirements. All of this is things that we have to consider when we think about the information dimension or that perspective as we look at building out our products and services. So when we look at this and we look at information and technology, what are some of the considerations we should be thinking of? Well, we should be thinking of, is this compatible with the current architecture? Is this going to work with the technology we're already using? Does it raise any kind of regulatory, legal, compliance, or information security control issues? If I start holding a lot of people's personal information, how am I going to protect it, for instance? Because there's laws that say I have to protect it. The next thing is, will it continue to be viable in the foreseeable future? If I'm going to invest a lot of money into moving to this new server, is this going to be good for the next 3 to 5 years? Or is this something that's only going to be good for 3 months? If it's not good for the foreseeable future, we may want to rethink it. When we think about a new technology, is it going to align with the service provider or the service consumer strategy? We have to have a strategy of where we're going. For example, in my company, we have a strategy of what type of courses we want to teach. So even though I can teach probably 50 or 100 different courses, there's only about 20 or 30 courses that we have in our portfolio. And the reason is that aligns with our strategy where some of the other things don't. And when you think about this from your business, you have to think about what's in line with your strategy and what isn't. If you're a computer company, you probably want to be doing things that build computers. You don't want to start doing healthcare services. It doesn't align with your brand. Next, we're going to think about, does the organization have the right skills to support and maintain the technology? For example, if you're going to move all your stuff to the cloud, do you have people who know how to run Azure and AWS? Because those are skills you're going to need, and running cloud servers is different than running your own server farm. The next consideration we have to think about is it going to have enough automation capabilities that you can develop it and deploy it and operate it with less people in the future? Because we're always trying to minimize our overhead and lower our costs. Anything that can be automated, we probably want to automate it. Another thing we want to think about is, does it have additional capabilities that we can leverage for other products and services? This is an interesting one. If you think about this, this is actually how Amazon Web Services started. Amazon had to start building large server farms so that they can start selling more product as Amazon.com. But as they did that, they built up a lot of capability and they go, oh wait, I bet other businesses would like to have this capability too. And they started selling it as AWS or Amazon Web Services. Maybe that might apply to your business as well. As you're doing some kind of new capability, you're going to buy something for one capability, but it brings you other capabilities. And that now may add to your product or service line, just like Amazon did with AWS. And finally, we want to think about, does this new technology introduce new risks or new constraints to your organization? So if I'm going to move everything to the cloud, how is that going to work from a data loss prevention strategy? How is that going to work from a regulatory compliance strategy? All of those are things we have to think about in the risk. Now, when we think about risk, that's really going to go back to our last dimension as well. It's going to go back to our organizational culture. Depending on the nature of your organization's business and the culture you have, you may be more or less risk adverse. For example, if you're a small startup out in Silicon Valley, you're probably willing to take a lot of risk. But if you're a big established company, you probably don't want to take a lot of risks. You want to make sure things are stable, accurate, and reliable. And so those things are things you have to consider which technologies you're going to implement. Are you going to get the cutting edge, which is more risky, or are you going to get something that's more stable and tried and true? Again, these are all different considerations to think about. But the bottom line, especially for the exam, is that one of the dimensions we're going to be thinking about when we're building our product or service is based on the information and technology, and figuring out how that information technology is going to impact the service for the long haul.